So one day we were working in early sort of spring, right, of 2022, and all of a sudden there's a knock on the office door. It was the middle of sort of transitioning out of COVID restrictions and things like that, and so we just weren't used to having people coming around all that often. And so the door knocks and I go to answer the door, and standing in front of me is a young man and a family of 4 who look rather put out and unsure of what's going on. And so I invite them in. I say, "What's happening? How can we help you?" And the young man explains to me that he was at the bus stop, which is just half a block away from here, when this family approached him. And they spoke Spanish, he spoke English, and through Google Translate and a lot of gesturing, figured out that they were a refugee family that had come into Canada the day before and had been arrested, and now they were looking for help. And the young man had no idea, but thought, or the Lord laid on him the idea to see if there's a church nearby. And so he Googled churches, and we were the closest. And so he walked them over to our church, knocked on the door, and said, "Here we are." I still wonder if maybe he was an angel, and he brought them to us to welcome them into our church together. I know that we have a refugee sponsorship committee here that has done really good work, and we're in the process of calling our 3rd family and working with our 3rd family now. And so I reached out to the chair of the refugee sponsorship committee. He was unable to answer at the time. So then I called the next person on the committee, and that was John and Pearl. And I said, "Pearl, this is what's going on. I don't know what it looks like yet, but do you think there's anything that we can do?" And Pearl said, "I don't know if there is, but we'll come down and we'll see."
So the background to this is that Pearl and I had already been thinking about sponsoring or having a Ukrainian family over. And with the war in Ukraine and everything, we had decided that we were going to take in a Ukrainian family. So that was a few days before we got the call. And so then when we got the call, then we thought, wow, this is kind of giving us a curveball on our plans. And so we thought, well, I think when we came in here, said often life happens in the process of planning something else. So when we came in, then we thought, well, let's do it, because I think somehow God had already been preparing our hearts with a Ukrainian family. And so, well, here's another family. So we thought, well, you know, this is probably some kind of message we should be paying attention to.
When you are part of a church family, or you find yourself at a church, you don't know who's going to come knocking at the door. You don't know who the next person's going to be at your doorstep. And so it's just always good to be ready, to be prepared for who God is going to bring into your life. And so the encouragement would be not to be a closed-off church or closed-minded, or trying to find always an outside spot to shuffle people to, but to be the sort of the hands and feet of Christ, and be willing to embrace and welcome in and hear stories.
One of the nurses from our church stepped in when she heard that one of the girls had gotten a rash. She just stepped in, showed up at our doorstep with all kinds of medications, and also just totally did what she was called to do, which is being a nurse. So that was, again, an example of the whole church stepping in. I know people dropped off baking, the Spanish translation, and just all the support we got. We didn't feel that we were doing this as John and Pearl. We were doing this as a church.
We weren't prepared for this. And what I mean by that is we didn't make plans, we didn't have procedures, we didn't know exactly what to do in that moment, but we were willing and we were ready. And one of the things that we try to posture ourselves as leaders, and we try to set up in the church, is a readiness to go wherever God calls, and a willingness to respond when He puts something in front of you. And I think that's what we were trying to do. That's what our sort of like philosophy of missional ministry has been around here. It's just a willingness to be ready and go when God calls. and then trust that along the way, He's going to provide the people you need. And we saw that overwhelmingly. And it was a lot of fun. Like one of the things, as they were living in our community and worshiping with us, we started introducing Spanish greetings, right? We gave the Lord's greeting in Spanish and started adding, like as simple as vaya con Dios at the end of our worship services, go with God. I just think part of the ordinary life of church is doing these things together. And God does some pretty extraordinary things in those ordinary moments.